Hi, everyone. I'm going to talk to you all today about how working people are using digital tools and tactics to influence their employers, and in some cases, even determining their working conditions. But first, I'm going to start with a story. Carmen sort of alluded to it. Perhaps you've noticed in the past few months that the baristas at your neighborhood Starbucks have tattoos. Well, that's not by accident. That's actually because of this woman. This is Christy Williams. She's a 20-something single mom who works at Starbucks in Atlanta, Georgia. And last summer, the air conditioning in Christy's store was on the fritz for 2 weeks. And during that time, Christy and her coworkers all had to wear long-sleeve shirts and long pants to cover their tattoos because Starbucks had a company-wide policy that banned visible tattoos for its employees. So while the air conditioning was out, Christy began to think of this not as just a nuisance, but this policy was actually a health hazard. And she went to her manager and said, "We've got to change this. This policy is bad, no one likes it, customers don't care." And her manager said, "I agree with you, but there's nothing we can do. Corporate knows that people are unhappy with it, and for whatever reason, they've decided to stick with this policy." Well, Christy decided that wasn't good enough. And that night, she went online and created her own campaign asking Starbucks corporate to end this ban on visible tattoos. Now, Christy was really smart. She knew, because she was an employee, she knew how to find other Starbucks employees. She immediately that night shared it with these sort of secret networks, secret groups on Facebook of Starbucks baristas. She tweeted it out to Barista Life and all these kind of cultural Twitter accounts that broadcast information about what it's like to be a barista. And within 24 hours, thousands of her coworkers from around the world had joined her campaign. So as weeks went on, her campaign was humming along. Thousands of other coworkers kept joining the campaign every week. But Christy knew that she had to do more to get the company's attention. She had to show that employees of Starbucks were so serious about this campaign, it wasn't going to go away if Starbucks continued to ignore it. So she decided to invite her signers to take photos of their tattoos that they were covering up at work and post them on Instagram. And Christy had the idea to use Starbucks' own social media channel to communicate with the company. So they used the hashtag to be a partner to kind of celebrate the company and talk about what's going on in their stores. And so within the next few days, hundreds of photos poured in on this social media channel, sort of jammed up all of Starbucks' own internal social media communications, and then it kind of took on a life of its own. So petition signers like this one found ways to incorporate their own personal story and frustrations into the broader effort to end the tattoo ban. Baristas even invited customers in their store. This was snapped by a customer in a Florida Starbucks store who was curious about what this campaign was. And of course, being a single mom with 2 kids and 2 jobs, you might not have time to actually send out a press release. So we helped Christy reach out to the media about her campaign. And because she was a little shy in speaking to reporters, we helped her recruit more than a dozen other Starbucks employees who joined her campaign to speak to the media on the campaign's behalf. And of course, that resulted in media hits, not just in the US, but around the world. Christy herself was pretty excited about the coverage. This was a story that ran in Starbucks' hometown of Seattle. And the woman pictured here was a petition signer who happened to live in Seattle. And then about 6 to 8 weeks after the campaign launched, victory. It was kind of cool as an organizer just to see the outpouring of love and support that then came to Christy online from other baristas as they heard the news. They didn't know Christy, they just knew her from her petition, and they were thanking her for her courage and her leadership on this issue. But what happened next is perhaps more exciting. Christy's successful campaign inspired a dozen other Starbucks employees in the US and abroad to start campaigns on issues that they were personally passionate about. They even took on that issue of wages. And in fact, that's one of the surging campaigns on our site right now, is a wage hike petition for what's called tenured partners, people who've been at Starbucks for more than a year. And that number is actually a little old. We now have more than 20,000 Starbucks employees in 17 different countries who belong to the coworker.org community. What's also interesting is that her campaign inspired employees across the service sector to start their own dress code campaigns, that her single action rippled throughout the industry, and we're seeing like second and third generation campaigns starting. In fact, this week, you might have heard on the news, there's a Publix bagger from Florida who is asking for the right to be able to grow a neatly trimmed beard. And he's been generating national media coverage, and he's already recruited thousands of Publix workers to join his campaign. So every successful campaign and unsuccessful campaign is growing a community on our site of workers inside those targeted companies. And that's where like much more becomes possible, right? Because you now got, at Starbucks we have about 7% of the global workforce subscribing to coworker.org. And that opens up a range of possibilities of what we can do together. So we've started launching experiments around curated social content, qualitative and quantitative surveys to see like what kind of tech interventions can be staged to spread workplace activism and maximize an individual worker's impact. And so far we're finding exciting results. So our curated social content has inspired more Starbucks workers to start campaigns and actually increased our engagement of that community on our site. I believe that the future of work, and this has been talked about a little bit by Pollock, but the future of work is workplace activism. And if you don't believe me, I'd just like to ask how many people in this room have ever visited Glassdoor and checked out an employer? Okay, I'm seeing a lot of hands. So I consider you all workplace activists because you've accessed information, and perhaps you've even submitted and shared information that has empowered yourself or another individual in negotiating with an employer or in advocating internally in a company for better working conditions and benefits. And Glassdoor is one example of this new normal, right? Of valuing transparency and information sharing, and of passively pressuring employers to improve their working conditions. Now, sometimes Glassdoor is not enough, right? Because there is the tyranny of low expectations, and in many industries, no one is really put under much pressure by a bad review. Workers are also using Reddit and sites like it to share information and to whistleblow and make public some of the circumstances they're dealing with. This is an example of photos that were taken in two different Golden Corral restaurants. There's a Golden Corral subreddit, and workers were upset about understaffing in their restaurants and decided, I'm going to show the world what happens when you understaff our restaurants. And this was a story that ended up running on BuzzFeed and created a lot of, I'm sure, a PR crisis for the company, hopefully resulting in some changes to their staffing practices. Workers are also coming up with their own solutions. This is a site that was created by a freelance journalist in Yemen who was tired of always receiving late payments from major media companies. And she knew that she wasn't alone. Like this is a chronic, common problem for freelance journalists across the industry. So she created a name and shame site where any journalist could submit what their late payment is, who's the client, and how much they're owed. And in fact, if you visit this site right now, you'll see that they're actually winning payments for freelancers who were waiting from these companies. And then one of my favorite examples is from last summer. 25,000 non-union supermarket employees in New England who work for the grocery chain Market Basket went on a weeks-long strike, completely coordinated by this Facebook page, this sort of ugly but very effective Facebook page. And it functioned as like a campaign headquarters. It told workers what to do at any given day. It also helped coordinate a very effective customer boycott. The strike was so effective that it actually showed up on the DOL jobs report of last summer as having a dent in the overall jobs numbers. And then they won. They got the outcome that they were seeking in August. Totally remarkable and not possible before the internet and organized rallies like this one. So I'll close on this point. This is the new normal. And as more working people discover their power in advocating for themselves in the workplace, we are going to realize more just and equitable work environments. It's why I'm ultimately incredibly optimistic about where we stand. And I hope that you'll all join me in thinking about how we can build tools and solutions to help workers win. Thank you.